Hello and welcome to my Studio Chronicles. I got a rejection letter in the email this week, and it smarts just a little bit, but the painting that I submitted for this international show was not a very strong painting, so I wasn't really surprised. And I saw online that somebody was just gnashing their teeth because they had painted a watercolor that was a beautiful watercolor, but they had suffered a rejection. And it made me remember so many years ago. I've been painting for a long time, but so many years ago, I didn't get into a show that I really wanted to get into. And a very wise artist said to me, your rejection file needs to fill up before your acceptance file begins to fill up. And so I set my expectations a little bit lower. And even though each time I submitted a painting to a show and I got rejected, it stung a little bit. I recently really appreciated reading a quote I'm going to read to you. This is a quote of Georgia O'Keeffe. Flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I am quite free. So I have to give myself this advice from time to time, and I'll give it to you. You might try to care less about whether a juror or a jury accepts your work or awards your work or rejects your work. It's just one person's opinion. And more than once in my career as a painter have I submitted a painting and got rejected to one show, drummed up the courage to submit it to another show and win an award with it. So don't be discouraged. So moving on, in today's Studio Chronicles, I'll be covering a few things. I'm going to show you how I made two paintings out of one, two stronger paintings out of one mediocre painting without even lifting a brush. So that's coming up. And I'm going to demonstrate one of my favorite things to do, which is to take out a few unusual tools and make some marks on a couple of pieces of paper. In this case, one of my favorite things is to make marks that remind me of some of the textures and colors that I see in a garden. And I will take those couple of pieces of paper and I will tear them up and I will recompose them in my sketchbook, which is a really helpful way for me to abstract the garden landscape. So stay tuned for that. And finally, at the end of this video, I'll be sharing yet again another favorite tool. So stay tuned. Okay, so I pulled this rather large painting out of my stash. It's a watercolor. There's a little other media in there. It didn't have really big enough shapes for the size of the painting. It's smaller shapes. So after having it in my stash for 2 or 3 years, I pulled it out of my drawer and I realized there are elements of this painting I really like and I want to leave it mostly watercolor. So I pretty much cut it in half and I made these two paintings and I like them. Well, wasn't that an easy way to get two paintings out of one? I really liked those paintings. I love to work abstractly with bright color and lots of marks. So now I'm going to show you how I like to go into the garden and make some patterns and textures that remind me of leaves and flowers and background texture. And I like to bring those back into the studio and tear them up and create abstracted garden paintings in my sketchbook. So come along. You can see here one piece of paper that I have torn just before the camera rolled, but this was one page of sketch that I did of a garden wall and a bougainvillea. So I've torn it up and I'm thinking about how I will reposition some of these marks so that it holds together better as a composition. This is one of my favorite exercises. And once I decide on how I want to place some things, I'll glue them down into my sketchbook. But right now I'm sort of auditioning. I'm using my intuition, trying to decide what would look good where. There's no right or wrong, of course. And probably you will wish that I kept some things that I glue underneath other elements, but I'm the artist here, so bear with me. I'm sort of second guessing myself looking back at it, but okay, so I've chosen a couple of pieces here that to me go together pretty well. So I've decided on these. That's a start for my first attempt. I'm going to get my matte medium out, that is to say my gel medium out, and I use a small palette knife to apply the gel medium to the back. It's just a little bit neater than using my fingers, and I can smooth it down with my palette knife, or I can use a brayer. That would work too. Sometimes I grab a brayer. So I'm putting the first piece down, then I'm deciding just how to place this second piece to finish my first page of my sketchbook. This abstracted painting may or may not inspire me to do a larger piece, but at the very least it appeals to me just as an abstract. So now the second collage that I created in this session, I took a different piece of paper. This was just impressions of bougainvillea. So I'm taking bits from the first page and adding them to the second page, fiddling around, seeing what I like. There's no right or wrong. It's not a fast puzzle. Sometimes it takes me some time to figure out what I like. Using a straight edge is nice to be able to tear. That appeals to me. Okay. Somewhere along those lines. Adding some gel medium again with my trusty palette knife. I like the uneven edges at the bottom of this piece. Sort of breaks the rules of working in a rectangle. Okay. Got that glued down. I kind of like this yellow ochre and pinks and magentas. There was a wall, an ochre colored stucco wall that the bougainvillea was growing up along its vines, and this will always remind me of that beautiful wall that I saw in France last summer. These colors and textures. To me, this is just a lot more fun than trying to depict a realistic perspective of bougainvillea. It's just some of the feelings that I had, the sensations of those flowers. I thought about putting some more flower shapes and colors down at the bottom, but in the end, I decided to just fill in that little piece and leave it at that. so. This, again, I am repeating myself, but this is such a fun way to do a composition. When I get to a garden and I look at a garden, if I'm going to depict it realistically, there's always just so much to think about. So that's number one, number two, and here's a previous one that I had done of that wall. Finally, today's tool of the day, if you will, is I like to keep a variety of mats on hand in my studio. They're all beat up, they're messy, but just watch what I do with them. The nice thing about playing with watercolor on paper, or any multimedia on paper, is that you can play and you can whack off a corner if you don't like it. I wouldn't say this is my favorite painting, but with mats, I can figure out, do I want to keep the whole painting? Oh, I might like that whole painting. Or perhaps I want something smaller and maybe I can find something I like a little bit better just by looking around. So that takes the pressure off always worrying about composition. If you're in the garden and you're painting, I could probably find a lot of paintings with this little mat. There are some stronger elements here and there. So I have this option. Grab some old mats and stick them aside and take them out and use them when you need them. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you'll come back. Hit subscribe, and did you know that if you hit that little bell, YouTube will remind you when I have a new video out. I hope to be posting every Thursday, 10 o'clock Central, but you can watch it anytime. Bye-bye.